The N52 motor, the F1 race-inspired naturally aspirated motor found in the E9X 328s, is unique compared to other naturally aspirated engines because a lot of horsepower can be found just from switching intake manifolds. The 330i conversion, or otherwise known as the 3-stage manifold swap, can add upwards of 30 horsepower on completely OEM parts. This is a popular modification and has been documented many times. Now the other one that people like to do is the N54 manifold retrofit, which I'm going to show you how to do today. And I'm going to tell you absolutely everything that you're going to need to know for this swap. This was first done by a forum user named BiginBoca, which for those who have been in the community for a while recognize that name as one of the pioneers of N52 modifications. He was always a huge inspiration to my build, and I'm sure a lot of other people too. A lot of the information that I'll be sharing today is referenced from his forum post on this subject, but with some slight adjustments. So big shout out to him. He has done a lot for this platform, and I know he'll probably be watching this. So big shout out to you, Boca. You've inspired a lot of us. So to start off, what is the reason for doing the N54 manifold swap? The first reason is more power on the higher end of the RPMs. When compared to the 3-stage intake manifold, the 3-stage manifold outputs higher horsepower at some points in the lower RPMs, but falls off and loses power beyond about 6,600 RPM, whereas the N54 manifold might output less power early on, but it delivers it in a far more linear fashion and produces peak power beyond 7,000 RPM. So this is most beneficial to those with, say, an increased redline or a more aggressive differential than what their car came with, because both instances allow you to spend more time in the higher RPMs where those gains are. And like I said, delivers the power in a far more linear fashion than the 3-stage, which alters the length of the intake runners by opening and closing the diff valves at different times. But yeah, maybe they could be called diff valves because, you know, it creates different length runners at different times, you know what I'm saying? Which, speaking of, years ago in my 3-stage video, I did a terrible job of explaining how they work. But anyways, diff valves are the next reason why someone might choose the N54 manifold over the 3-stage. Now you would think that adding a part from the N54 would make the N52 less reliable because pretty much every N54 part is prone to failure. But actually in this scenario, the 3-stage is more complex than the N54 manifold. Now it's not extremely common, but it's possible. Some people have reported diff valves falling apart, particularly the big one, and then getting sucked up into the engine and causing catastrophic damage, whereas the N54 manifold doesn't do any sort of varying length, so it doesn't have anything that can break off and fail inside. So that's maybe score 1, and probably the only one, for N54 reliability over the N52. So yeah, congrats. Anyways, this has got me thinking the 3-stage retrofit is usually referred to as the 330i conversion because that's the cars they came with. So what do you call putting a 335 manifold on a 328? Is it somewhere in the middle? I don't know, maybe a 332i conversion? These answers are all beyond my pay grade, but I'm probably going to have to revise the badge on the back of my car. But the questions you're probably asking that I can answer: does the N54 manifold fit on the N52? Well, let's just say it fits like a glove. About as well as the glove that fit OJ. But let's be honest, we all know just because it's not supposed to fit doesn't mean that it can't. Back in the day when BiginBoca did this modification, he had to use all sorts of different parts and kind of MacGyver a way for this all to work. But it set the stage for the companies that are out there now, which produce parts to make this swap easier than it ever was before. Because there are a couple of differences between the two manifolds that prevent it from being a direct swap. So the first difference is there is no PCV return port. There's a spot where they were clearly thinking about it, but they never finished it, I guess. So we will be adding a PCV return, and we will use an adapter kit that will put it in the right direction. But more about that later. Also, if you are an early N52 model, one with the magnesium valve cover, you're going to have to figure out something totally different with the PCV system. Most simply, I'd suggest deleting the entire CCV oil separator thingy, installing a catch can, and plugging off the oil return line on the oil pan. So the next difference between the two is the mounting hardware. Both holes are the same spacing, but the intake ports line up in different spots. So if you were to put the N54 manifold on as it is, it would sit too low and air would leak through the bottom. I tried demonstrating this myself by putting the two manifolds together, but it didn't really work, so BiginBoca's got a better demonstration of this. So the way to combat this is by replacing the stock inserts on the bolt holes. And there are various companies producing the inserts for these, and they all pretty much work just as well as each other. The next difference is the hose connecting the manifold to the air box. There's a lot of different things that you could do to combat this, like adapting to a cone filter, but I will be using a new product by Tort, which is a perfect fit between the N54 manifold and the N52 intake box. The next difference is the N54 manifold does not have an evap vent port, but it does on the N54 throttle body, so you will have to use the N54 throttle body. Now, the last couple things that need to be pointed out only apply to the early N52 models, typically the ones with the magnesium valve covers. The throttle body plug is different on those ones than it is on the later N52 models, the N52K, which uses the same plug as the N54. So if you have an early N52 model, you'll need to splice in a new connector for the throttle body. It is direct plug and play for all the later model ones. Since mine is a 2011, I won't need to do this. So I'll link a video by Raymond who shows how to repin the connector for the throttle body. So basically, if you have an early model, there's a lot more work that you're going to have to do, but otherwise, if you're a later model, just follow exactly what I'm doing. So now that I've already given you so much information, let's get into the actual video. So here are pretty much all the parts that you're gonna need to do the N54 manifold retrofit to the N52 motor. First off, of course, we have the N54 manifold as well as the N54 throttle body. And then not necessary, but probably recommended is I have a new throttle body gasket as well as the runner gaskets as well. So we have the Printables Auto stuff over here. First off are these, the bolt spacer inserts, which will bring the manifold to the proper height that we need. And then of course we have the PCV heater adapter plate. It comes with the spacer and the ring, as well as the hardware that you need, as well as the vacuum hose block off. Pretty much everything you need to make the PCV side of everything work. So then of course I have a brand new PCV hose, which we'll be modifying to work with this setup. Then of course we have a new product by Tort Sport. It's a silicone hose, which is a direct plug and play for the N54 manifold and throttle body to the N52 intake box, which will just make everything just bolt up very nicely, very easy, which is what I like. Both of these products here make this whole retrofit that much easier. It's easier than it ever used to be to do this setup. And then of course we have two hose clamps. So first things first, we're gonna start with the easy stuff. And we're just gonna punch out these bolt inserts and then replace them with the Printable Auto modified inserts. So the way I'm gonna do it is just I'm gonna prop it up on a piece of wood and come from the back side. Hit it from the back basically with a Phillips number 3 big old screwdriver. I like to call it the BFS, big fucking screwdriver. And it's just big enough to fit into the slot, but not hit the plastic edge, and just perfectly punch it out. So comes out pretty easy too. And there's that, they can be discarded. Okay, now for the inserts. They're gonna be installed upwards. They're gonna be with the U shape facing upward. So I have like 3 different sets of these. Tort sent me some. I have some that I bought on eBay a few years ago, and then the Printables Auto ones. In this case, the Tort ones are fitting just slightly better. Just a side note, the Printable Auto inserts were originally designed a little bit too small, and they were recommended to be installed with RTV. I reached out to the owner of the company, and he revised the design to fit more snug without using RTV. While I'm here, I guess I'll remove these gaskets. Okay, so now for the only actually somewhat challenging part, modifying this port to actually house the PCV heater. So as you can see, it's filled. Had plans to maybe put one there, but they never finished it. But basically we're gonna cut it to accommodate actually having one. Here's a PCV heater. As you can see, it has an O-ring, and then the rest just kind of goes in there. So the O-ring seals against the edge. So basically all we need to do is cut the bottom where it's recessed and then tap holes, and we will be using the adapter kit to put it at the correct angle, roughly this direction. And as you can see, the holes are routed to only go that direction or this direction. It's sealed with an O-ring, so as long as you don't cut the sidewall, it should be fine. So we just need to basically cut out the bottom. So the way I'm gonna go about doing this is I'm gonna start with a drill. pretty big drill bit, just drill a few pilot holes, and then we'll use a Dremel to kind of cut out the rest. Might be a little bit too destructive, so I should probably stop. Safety is the #1 priority. I can see inside now that I was not careful enough with that drill bit, and I made some indents inside, but it didn't cut through though, so don't be like me. Okay, not nearly as pretty as Boca's. Oh yeah, that'll work. What BiginBoca did was find a way to flip the orientation from this to this. BiginBoca basically MacGyvered away from common parts at a hardware store to make his own way to flip it, but basically Printables Auto makes their own kit which does the same stuff and is debatably easier to work with because it's 3D printed. So basically, it comes with this ring and these two wool spacers, right? These spacers are gonna go on, and then this ring is gonna go like this. But the purpose of this ring is we can drill new holes to orient it however we'd like. Okay, so I kind of messed up the first one, so I'm gonna take a different approach. Alright, so for drilling into the ring, I didn't really do it in the most effective way possible. So the footage I have for this demonstration part isn't going to exactly line up with what I'm going to suggest. I messed up my first attempt, and then even my second attempt wasn't very great either. But luckily it does come with 2 rings in case you mess it up. So here's the way that I would suggest that you do it. So using a 1/4-inch drill bit, drill a hole somewhere in the center of the plastic, and line up the hole in conjunction to one of the screw holes on the manifold. Make sure that the ring is as central as possible over the hole into the manifold. By looking underneath, do your best to make a visual estimate on where the second hole needs to be. Then by using a paint marker, put a dot where that hole should be drilled, and then drill it out. After that, tap the holes for the manifold. What I did was kind of visually match up the drill bit size to the screws. Now you could either use the screws that come with the Printables Auto kit, or you could be like me. I used these OEM style universal screws that they use to mount all sorts of different things to the manifolds. I just like that the threads were a bit bigger on these, so if you wanted to use them as well, you should have some extras from your original manifold. But it really doesn't matter, you can use pretty much any screw. So here's me using the ring and the spacer, and the screw is kind of a representation on how deep you need to tap into the manifold, which really isn't that far. But anyways, the drill bit that was a perfect tap for these screws was a 532. After that, screw the ring onto the body and make sure that it fits up. Mount the PCV heater in the position and orientation that you would like it to be. I installed mine with a slight left-leaning tilt. Then once again, using the paint marker, put 2 dots in the screw holes of the PCV heater. Then unscrew the ring and drill the holes. Doing it this way ensures that everything is going to fit up nicely. And then by using a 1/4-inch drill bit instead of something smaller, it allows for a bit of wiggle room so you don't have to be as precise with the drilling positions. I'm going to screw this back on. So spacers down below, and when I'm tightening them, I'm pushing them so they're not in the way of the porthole. Okay, so now for the slightly challenging part due to the positioning of these. I'm going to use a 9mm box wrench as a counterhold. I'm going to use this as the counterhold on the back, and then I'm going to tighten it with this. But before you install the PCV heater, you'll notice it has an O-ring. Now, it's always a good idea to lubricate O-rings. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the BMW recommended O-ring lubricant, KY Jelly. And we're just gonna, put a little bit on, and we're just gonna lube up that O-ring, right? Now, just gonna push it on, basically. If I can get it started with the nut on the bottom. Basically doing it entirely by feel, but in the heat of passion, a lot of things are done just by feel. This one doesn't look too bad. The other one will probably be more of a challenge. So the O-ring's gonna do a lot of the work. Obviously, I'm not gonna crank it down. This top one is definitely gonna be a challenge. Let's see if I can do it like this maybe. I'll put it in the box wrench, place it against the body of the manifold. Just kidding, I'm not sure that's an option. Trying to use a pick to get the nut into the right spot. Well, I think I did it. Yep, I did it. Get my counter hold in. Hopefully it starts. Yep, I think it started. If I knew I was gonna have to perform basically surgery, I would have called up Dr. Dean. And yeah, I'm not gonna crank it down because I do notice that the nut appears to be touching the body of the manifold. That shit ain't going anywhere. Okay, so like I said, that back screw was kind of starting to touch the body of the manifold, so kind of let off because I don't want to put stress on the ring. I don't want it to bow, basically. It might already be slightly bowing. Not like the airplane, but you know, either way, this thing's not going to go anywhere. And as I mentioned, the O-ring on the heater itself does all the work, so it really shouldn't be a problem. Well, now that we're here, take this little cap and plug off this little vacuum spot right here. Now that fits on there pretty snug. I don't think you need to add any sort of glue or clamp or anything, but that seems to work just fine. So now for the last part of the modification, we need to create a new PCV hose, because as you can see, this is a brand new stock one. It has 2 connections. I'm not really sure why the N52 manifold has 2 connections to begin with, but yeah, basically we need to make one that will only have 1. And there's a lot of different ways you can go about doing this based on if you want to have a catch can or what have you, you know. But since mine is a 2011 and the PCV is built into the valve cover, I am gonna opt to not have a catch can. I'm gonna make my own with just a hose that returns to the PCV. Like I said, there's a lot of ways you can do it. BiginBoca did it his way. I don't feel too confident about clamping hose onto another hose. That usually tends to leak. If you've ever worked with plumbing or something, you try to extend like a dryer, a washer, dump hose. You can't just put them together because they'll both compress without having some type of fitting or joint in between that will to compress on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the fittings from both sides, these quick connects, this 45 and this straight on one. Then I'm gonna use this PCV hose kit, also provided by Printables Auto, which includes a length of PCV grade hose, plenty of hose clamps. I think he includes enough to do a catch can if that's what you're gonna do, but like I said, I'm not gonna do a catch can. With some scissors, I'm just gonna cut this hose. Just gonna chop off these 2 ends and probably break my scissors. Yeah, hold on. So, chopped off the 2 ends. We'll make our own custom hose, mimicking the length. So, what I will do is basically use the original one as a guideline for how long it should be. At least roughly, you know. We'll chop it about there. Bad day to be a pair of plastic scissors. Plenty of leftover if I were to do a catch can, but and there we have it. We pretty much have a perfect length hose. It's even got the curve that we kind of want to. So now I'll just tighten these hose clamps and this will be good to go. And with this, you can probably totally get away with reusing your old fittings as long as the O-ring's in good shape and the quick connect's in good shape as well. But I figured I have a brand new one sitting around, I might as well just use it. And that's pretty much good to go into the car. So the only thing I forgot is you got to swap this little sensor over here with the one that's on the N52. Boom. Now we are officially ready to install this in the car. I almost forgot. Need gaskets. These just Press on. Now we are officially ready to put it into the car. Now for the sake of the runtime, I'm not going to show the whole process of removing the intake manifold, but trust me, I can do it pretty quick. But I'll just show you a little bit of the final actual installation of it. So I'll be installing this on my 2011 E92 328, which is pretty fitting for this partial 335 conversion because after all, it does kind of have some similarities to majority of other 335s with its mismatched body panels and rebuilt salvage title. After a bit of sweating and maybe 30 minutes or so, I got the intake manifold off. So much lighter weight, even over the stock one. Probably gonna be so much easier to install as well. Plug in the heater. Like a glove, baby. Probably would have been smarter to put the throttle body on when it was off. New gasket. Hose is on there. That box fits up perfect. Now, throttle body, it's gotta be like this. Okay. Throttle body plug. I hate these things, bro. They're not as bad as the Ford Quick Connects, but they're not good either. I'll break it up a bit. Yep, that helped. Giving it a little twist. So now we throw this on somewhere. I guess I'm fine with that. Part that should make everything easier is the Tort Sport hose. The Tort Sport thing. I think this is the proper, that looks proper. Now for the final piece. And we're golden. So after installing, the only thing that's left to do is to tune for this new hardware. I'm sure it would not be detrimental to run the car without the tune accounting for it if you needed to, but you might not see the same benefits otherwise. So I had reached out to my tuner, 22RPD, which I believe is the best tuning company for the N52 platform, and requested a revision for this change. And once I received it, I flashed the tune and the car was ready to go. So now it's time to take it out on the road and give it a Doug score. So the whole thing seemed to wake up the car just a little bit. A nice little upgrade for an otherwise completely stock car. But as I mentioned before, there might be a few reasons why you would want to swap to this. Maybe you're about to throw on a turbo kit or a supercharger, something along those lines. Speaking of superchargers, a few weeks ago I did an overview video on a 480 horsepower supercharged N52 setup. I'll put a link to that on the screen. You should definitely check it out. But otherwise, I hope this video helped you. If it did, please leave a comment, a thumbs up, and definitely subscribe for more N52 stuff. Anyways, thanks for watching. Bye.